For all my lawyers out there, you know that the legal profession can be absolutely brutal, to the point where you may be asking, why am I even doing this? Why am I putting myself through the stress, through the anxiety, through the burnout, and how do I overcome it? If you've been in this situation, I think this video is going to be for you, because I've been on a journey in the last year or so of trying to get more enjoyment out of this brutal profession. And along my journey of trying to learn as much as I can on how to be able to make the most out of my legal career, I stumbled upon this particular book, The Way of the Trial Lawyer Beyond Technique. Because this book is designed to provoke thought, insight, reflection, this video isn't going to be a summary of like, hey, here's the book boiled down in a 5-minute quick little synopsis so you don't have to buy the book. This is not how the book is designed to be read. It is more of a workbook. You have to work through it in order to get the most out of it. What we're gonna do is take the approach of touching on a few topics raised in this book that really resonated with me. I don't wanna talk about all the topics raised in this book because it would take forever. There are a lot of topics in this book, but I wanna talk about the ones that really hit home and probably were the ones that I had to wrestle with the most, or still wrestle with the most, and then talk about the growing pains in the thought process and what all this book has sparked internally and externally with me. And the reason why I want to make this subjective about me isn't in order to be like, this video is about me. It's because I don't want to project onto you what my struggles are by making an assumption that you're going through the same struggles that I'm going through. Along those lines, I do want to stress that even though I've interviewed Rick, he doesn't know I'm making this video. He didn't ask me to make this video. This is truly me trying to get the conversation started, and it's something that I think he's going to appreciate, because in his book, he says this: I hope this book provokes thought and discussion about how we live our lives as trial lawyers. If it does that, I will consider it a success. But I hope it does more. I hope it helps you become a better trial lawyer. In a sense, this book is an attempt to describe the ideal trial lawyer, or perhaps the ideal way to live the life of a trial lawyer. It is aspirational. I have made every mistake of action or intention alluded to in this book, and I will probably make them again. But we all need to know and understand the ideals we are trying to manifest, even if at times we fall short. Topic number 1 is fear. Probably the most common concern that I hear from other lawyers, either through Law Venture or just in my daily interactions. There's some level of fear going on. And I think this chapter on fear is, I don't know if you can even see that or read that, starts off in a pretty hilarious but relatable way. It says, let's look objectively at our job description. Wanted, lawyer willing to work in a competitive, hostile environment. Must be willing to interact on a daily basis with other lawyers whose job it is to make sure you fail. Sometimes those interactions will be in person, sometimes by phone or email. Those interactions will be constant, every day. Must be willing to work many nights, weekends, and holidays. Reading, assimilating, and producing mountains of paperwork required. Occasional trials will be required. During trials, expect to work 16 to 20 hours per day and battle your opponents in front of 12 strangers and a judge who may have the inclination to help you lose. Stakes will be high. If you lose, ... Well, Rick, you nailed that one. I do have an interview with Shane Reed, who's a best-selling author and a trial lawyer himself, where there's one episode in that interview that talks about managing your fear and anxiety of public speaking in the courtroom. That is a little bit different from what we're talking about now. Managing the fear and anxiety that you're experiencing the day of is one thing, but in Rick's book, and in this chapter specifically, it's all about trying to see what the cause of your fear is and trying to have a healthier relationship with it. And what Rick brings up is the fact that if you have this life or death view of going to the courtroom to where if you lose, then somehow that's the equivalent of death, then not only are you going to see the stakes as being incredibly and unrealistically high, but your stress levels will most likely match that. And I think Rick is absolutely correct in saying that you're not going to be the best advocate for your clients when your stress levels are that high. I personally know that from playing sports. I'm at my best when I play basketball, when I'm having fun playing basketball, not when I'm stressed out or I'm scared or I'm angry. It's when I'm fun and I have a smile, I'm loose and I'm not second guessing. I'm in the moment and I'm enjoying that moment. And so I think what this chapter on fear is trying to do is change your relationship with what you are fearing by first figuring out what is the root cause of that fear, which is again different from managing the fear and anxiety that does come with it. And so part of this exercise in the chapter is, and I'm going to really oversimplify it, is writing out, okay, what are you afraid of? And kind of like defining who you are. And then after you write out that list, look at the list and figure out what can actually be harmed if you go in the courtroom. Well, I personally know, like my body's not going to be harmed by going in the courtroom, at least, not reasonably likely that's going to happen. And emotionally, I'm most likely not going to be harmed. The real fear that I have is really a matter of self-image. And that's what it talks about as one of the potential options or one of the potential reasons for having fear in the courtroom. And I have, maybe it's ego. There's no maybe about it. I have this ego in me that wants to, I think the term that's used is be seen as like the trial god, to where you're one of the the best trial lawyers out there that doesn't lose. Like everyone wants to be like the Harvey Specter whenever they go in the courtroom. Nobody wants to be seen as a loser. And that's kind of the flip image that I think is causing the fear with me in particular, is I want the Harvey Specter appearance so much that I fear the alternative, which is being, having this appearance of being a lawyer that loses. And so that's one where I read this and I'm working through it. I'm stopping, I'm trying to figure out, okay, why do I have this fear? What is this fear? And how can I have a better relationship with it? And Rick poses the question at some point in the chapter that says something to the effect of, is your ego so fragile that you would avoid going to trial because of losing? And I think about it, I think about every aspect of my life, and it's just like, yeah, my ego really isn't that fragile. I've done a lot of things that have been embarrassing over the years. So why is this different? Is it because it's my profession? Is it because, my appearance and my reputation is, super valuable, and that's why I'm putting extra value in this particular aspect of my life? And that's probably what has been the cause of fear in the beginning stages of my legal career. But what's interesting about it, if we really stop and reflect, and I'm thinking out loud here, recent experiences really put in perspective that the fear of losing and being known as a lawyer that loses, or being seen as a lawyer that loses, isn't very reasonable. And I'll walk you through why I'm coming to terms with that. I'm not fully there yet, but I'm coming to terms with it. And so Rick mentions in the book, he does like napkin math on it, that in the plaintiff's lawyer's world, about 90% of cases lose. And I think that's an important thing to understand. You're, as a plaintiff's lawyer, basically expected to lose, which kind of takes some pressure off, right? Like, well, if 90% of cases are losing, then aren't most plaintiffs lawyers that lose? And, I guess my ego is like, well, maybe I'm the 10%. But then experience, especially recently, has really been taking that thought process to the next level, which is, what is a loss? What is losing? If I were to handle a case where a judge just didn't like me and wouldn't give me, a chance, then if there was nothing I could do, would I consider that a loss? And the answer is no. It's like, there's nothing I can do about that. It's just, I'm gonna lose before I even walk in the courtroom. And I experienced that firsthand whenever I got hometowned horribly, a year or two ago. And I didn't really feel at any point like a loser, felt angry about losing, but I didn't feel like my image was tarnished in the slightest. In that situation, I've touched on it in the past. I won't get too into the weeds about it now, just to kind of condense this video up a little bit more. But I lost about 5 hearings. I was 0 for 5. Didn't win a single one with this judge who, turns out, used to work with the defense lawyer, and the judge's kids and the defense lawyer's kids play soccer together on the weekends. I didn't stand a chance. And at some points, like me being hometown got so egregious that there was nothing for me to do other than just keep fighting for the client. And the irony in it was that even though I was losing hearing after hearing, I was really trying to, battle it out for my client. And I was showing that I'm not afraid to keep battling it out. And I kept catching this defense lawyer hiding evidence. Then we go have a hearing about it. And the judge is like, well, it's not that big of a mistake. It's not that bad. It's not that prejudicial. And the irony being that even though I kept losing, the defense's offers didn't go down. They didn't stay the same. I noticed that they kept going up and kept going up. And eventually they went up to a point where the client's like, yeah, let's take it, let's settle. In that situation, I never felt like I was a lawyer that loses. And then it makes me think logically, okay, if let's say a jury just doesn't like me, then am I going to consider that a loss? And there's just all these potential biases and prejudices and things that could go wrong at trial that I may never be aware of, that could stack the 90% loss rate to even more. And it's just like, all right, there's so much out of my control. What a judge has a history, or who the judge has a history with, or what the jury's thinking, or what the jury's doing behind closed doors or internally, or what my client's case is. There's some element of no control with the fact pattern that I'm dealing with. Do I consider those losses? And then the answer is I don't think I consider those losses. It really comes down to, okay, did I do the best I could in that situation? If I did, that's all I could do, and that's a win. Like, that's a win. It's easy to say right now as I'm like in the thinking out loud phase after just reading everything in Rick's book. It's going to be harder for the next trial that comes up, or maybe even the next hearing that I lose, to be in this mindset right now. But I'm slowly, and through experience and through, I guess, exposure with losses, starting to redefine what a true loss is. If you have any thoughts, questions, or concerns, or inputs on this topic of fear, leave those down in the comment section while I get a little hydrated. Topic number 2, perfectionist. For those that have watched other videos in the interview that I have with Eric Scramlin, you've heard me talk about the fact that I try to achieve perfection, even though I know that's utterly unreasonable. Well, Rick talks about this to some extent in the book, and there's a certain paragraph that I want to bring up because it hits home. It is hard to serve 2 clients at once, but that is what most trial lawyers are doing. In court, they are simultaneously trying to protect their client and their own self-image. Some will throw their client under the bus to protect their own self-image. Importantly, all the energy and effort that goes into protecting our self-image here, could be redirected to help win our cases. And so in court, the lawyer who wants to be well-liked is more concerned with being likable than with winning. The perfectionist lawyer is more concerned with being right and perfect than with winning. The suspicious, cynical lawyer is determined not to engage, not to trust, not to open his heart, more concerned with protecting himself from the pain of losing than in doing what is necessary to win. I've been trying to deal with my desire to be perfect since I was a kid. I specifically remember in the 7th grade, I didn't make the basketball team, and I was heartbroken. The coaches had told us before the results came out, like, look, if any of you do not make the team and you want to figure out exactly why you didn't make the team, come talk to this particular coach who's like the head honcho. So Saturday morning rolls around, my dad and I, we go to check out the list. It's printed at the school, and it's like, you read it. Name's not on there. I'm heartbroken. I'm not angry. I'm just sad. And so I get the courage to say, okay, I'm gonna go talk to this coach, and I'm gonna see what I did wrong, what happened. Maybe I made a coach angry. What's happening? I couldn't process it. And the coach told me, he said, look, we had you ranked really high. He recognized me as soon as I walked in. He was like, oh yeah, I know who you are. And he said, the problem was I wasn't aggressive enough. After talking with him and looking back and reflecting on how that tryout went, I basically was doing everything I could to not mess up. I was trying to avoid turnovers, which I did, and I was trying to avoid missing shots by not taking shots. His critique of me was I wasn't aggressive enough. And as a result, it put in perspective that I was given opportunities during the tryout to take shots, to be able to, show that I could score. I was given opportunities during tryouts to take advantage of mismatches, but I kept avoiding it in order to not have the misses, in order to avoid potential turnovers. So I played it way too safe. And that stuck with me. That was a great learning lesson. The following year, I was much more aggressive. I was taking shots. Even though I was missing, I ended up making the team. I made shots too, but I was also missing more because I was actually taking shots. And I've since then keep that in mind of like, look, in order to win in basketball, at the end of the day, it's whoever scores more points, and you can score more points by taking more shots. And so I've been trying to internalize that in my professional career as well, because I could, let's say, whenever I was a law student, I tried my first case and I won, and I could have said, yep, I'm stopping here, batting 1,000, shooting 100%. I have never lost. I'm 1 for 1. Or I could keep trying cases, keep going to hearings, keep, losing to being hometowned by a judge and being more comfortable with losing, which then gets to the fear aspect. I think that those go probably hand in hand. And so the desire for perfection is ironic. It's a little bit of a paradox that Rick kind of talks about or alludes to over and over again with being a lawyer. The paradox is the mistake is avoiding mistakes when it comes down to it. If you try to avoid mistakes, then you're making a mistake because you're not growing. And that's something that I try and actively do, which is go and make mistakes and go and get out of my comfort zone. And so I had to, after I read that little section that I read to you, stop, think, and see what part of my legal career am I afraid to not be perfect in? And those are the parts where I need to start getting out of my comfort zone so I can grow as a lawyer. Man, I did not expect this video to be such a therapy session, but we're really getting into it. I'm talking about even 7th grade memories and stories, but I hope this isn't coming off as, hey, this is time to talk about me, and hopefully you're getting value from it. I really am wanting to just show how this book sparked so many conversations with myself in order for me to really motivate my thought process to be a little bit healthier at certain times, in order to come to terms with certain things, and in order to ultimately have a better relationship with this profession. Topic 3, ego. So the book uses the phrase hungry ghosts as a way to describe lawyers that are never satisfied. They want more money, more associates, more offices, more possessions, and of course, more attention. And this is something that I've been reflecting on when it comes to my own personal ego, and I don't know where I sit on this. To some extent, I want to see how far I can go in my legal career, and part of that is ego. I want to see how much money I can recover for injury victims, and part of that is ego. I want to see how big of a law firm I could potentially grow, and again, ego I think is in there somewhere. I want to see how great of a lifestyle I can build for my family. I think ego's in there as well. But there's also the part of me, if I was satisfied, then would I keep working as a lawyer? Would I still have a job? At some point, if I reach satisfaction, would I just retire and do something else? like dissatisfied results in me being bored. And if I'm bored, then I'm obviously not going to be the best advocate I can be. And so this one's interesting. I don't know if I've fallen on any type of ultimate conclusion or thought or goal that I'm trying to pursue, because to some extent, the ego is what fuels the fire. And if there wasn't an ego in my situation, then I think I would have some degree of just being stagnant. It's interesting because I also understand, like, well, if you enjoy what you're doing, then you don't have to worry about being stagnant. But at the same time, it's like, if I'm enjoying what I'm doing because I'm taking pride in how I'm growing, then it's, I think that goes hand in hand. So the chapter does end by saying, simply stated, a strong ego enjoys being fed, but doesn't need to be fed. And so I'm just trying to grapple with, okay, at what point does the ego become toxic, or at what point is the ego healthy? And I don't know if I have an answer on that one, but it's definitely something that I will stop and reflect and see if I'm making a decision based on ego. Am I making a decision because I want to post about it on social media in order to subtly flex about it? I'm always thinking that way, and I don't know. That's something that's a little bit harder, because there are times where you have to balance being a business who's trying to increase brand awareness by sharing the good things that you've done. And I can't lie, there are benefits to people being like, congrats. And you're just like, I appreciate it. I'm so humbled by the kind words. And it feeds the ego a little bit, but you can't just also be like a hermit with your success, because if nobody knows you, then it's hard to grow a business and it's hard to maintain a business in that situation. This one's a little complex, at least for me. Let me know if you have any thoughts on it down in the comment section. I'm thinking we go ahead and cut this bad boy off at this point in time. We've hit 3 topics, and I think the 3 topics are big. We talked about fear, we talked about being perfect, and we talked about ego. And those are the holy trinity for insecurities with me. And I wanted to get the conversation going. Hopefully it does. If it doesn't, whatever, that's fine. But what I do want to stress is the fact that I only touched on 3 topics. There are plenty other topics in this book that I think every lawyer should work through. And in fact, I'll tease the fact that there's one particular topic that is probably, I'd say, the heart of this book, about being a better advocate and connecting better with jurors. I left that out because that is another video for another time, maybe a part 2 or later. But if you are interested in working through this book, which I do recommend, I'll provide a link down in the description. And I do want to say that the reason why I really, really took the time to work through this book as best as I can is because I recognize that there are times during my legal career, and I'd consider a short legal career, where I'm like, why am I doing this? Why am I putting myself through this stressful situation? There are so many other professions where you don't have to deal with any stress. Heck, with Law Venture, I can post a video and not have to deal with fighting anyone and not have to deal with any type of battle. And then there are times where I'm also thinking, how much money do I need in the bank to just walk away from this career and not have to deal with the stress? And I know when I have that type of mentality and that mindset, that I am just not in the place to be the best advocate I can be, because it means I'm being worn down by the other side. I'm being worn down by maybe even a judge or just the overall experience. And if I'm being worn down, then I'm not as sharp as I should be. And so my fear prior to reading this was, okay, if I'm not being as sharp as I can be, if I'm not being the best advocate, then I'm going to let my insecurities limit my growth. And I don't want to be 20 years, 30 years down the road looking back and thinking, yeah, I should be much further along in my journey than I am, but I let these insecurities get the better of me. And I don't want to have that regret. And so at the very least, if this is in the budget, get it, work through it, and see if there's going to be any benefit to you. Because even if you get some benefit to where you do have a better relationship with the legal profession, I think that's going to be worth it. I think that's going to, basically make this worth its weight in gold here. So I do recommend, especially plaintiff lawyers and criminal defense lawyers, to check this book out by Rick Friedman. But let's go ahead and wrap this up. So if you have any questions, comments, thoughts, concerns, or if you just want to say hi, leave that in the comment section down below. I'm going to get a sip of water that almost fell. But if you're new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe. And with all that said, I'll see you in the next video.